In just 23 seconds, 4,315 wire transfers worth $47 million. Pam Bondi didn't expect the spotlight to turn on her. She didn't expect her own financial records to surface. Cameras captured every moment of her face collapsing. The committee room erupted in gasps. What did Bondi accuse the Epstein investigation of hiding that only revealed her own secret transactions? At exactly 9:47 a.m. on March 15, 2019, former Florida Attorney General Pam Bondi walked into the mahogany-paneled hearing room like she already knew the verdict, but her leather binder nearly slipped from her trembling hands. The Florida Bar Association announced it would be reviewing her actions during her tenure as Attorney General to determine if disciplinary measures were warranted. The final blow came when Jordan revealed the last document in his folder. It was a handwritten note from Epstein to Bondi, dated just 3 months before his arrest, thanking her for years of friendship and promising that their business relationship would continue to be mutually beneficial. The note was written on Epstein's personal letterhead and signed with his distinctive signature, making it impossible for Bondi to claim it was fabricated or taken out of context. Bondi's shoulders sagged as the weight of her exposure settled over her like a burial shroud. She had walked into the hearing expecting to destroy the credibility of federal prosecutors and position herself as a crusader for justice. Instead, she had become the poster child for everything wrong with American politics, a living example of how corruption and hypocrisy could masquerade as righteous indignation until the truth finally came to light. The aftermath was swift and brutal. Within hours, news outlets across the country were running exposés about Bondi's relationship with Epstein, using the wire transfer documents as starting points for deeper investigations into her political and financial activities. Investigative journalists began examining her other major donors, her policy decisions as Attorney General, and her subsequent career as a lobbyist and political consultant. The story dominated news cycles for weeks, becoming a cautionary tale about the dangers of political arrogance and the power of thorough opposition research. Late-night comedy shows used clips of her shocked facial expression as punchlines, while serious news programs analyzed the broader implications of her exposure for campaign finance reform and political accountability. In the quiet aftermath of her public humiliation, Bondi retreated to her Tampa home, avoiding all media requests and canceling her planned speaking engagements. Friends and former colleagues described her as devastated and betrayed, struggling to understand how her carefully constructed political image had collapsed so completely in just 23 seconds of congressional testimony. The hearing became required viewing in law schools and political science programs across the country, studied as an example of how quickly political fortunes can change when confronted with irrefutable evidence. Students analyzed Jordan's tactical approach, Bondi's strategic mistakes, and the role of social media in amplifying political scandals in real time. Years later, political historians would mark that March morning as a turning point in American political accountability, the moment when the old rules about plausible deniability and strategic ignorance finally gave way to the unforgiving reality of digital financial records and unlimited information access. Bondi had learned too late that in the modern political arena, there are no secrets that can't be exposed and no lies that can't be uncovered. The lesson was clear and unforgiving. Confidence without facts is the fastest path to public humiliation. In an age of total information access, political figures who build their careers on attacking others while hiding their own corruption do so at their own peril. Truth has a way of surfacing at the worst possible moment, transforming accusers into the accused with devastating efficiency. What happens when someone overestimates their knowledge in front of the entire nation? What happens when the weapons you choose to destroy others become the instruments of your own destruction? Pam Bondi learned these answers the hard way in front of millions of witnesses in just 23 seconds that changed her life forever. If this story entertained or taught you a lesson about political accountability, like, share, and subscribe for more dramatic political exposés. What's the boldest mistake you've witnessed in politics? Let me know in the comments below. This dramatized story is inspired by real events and public figures. All dialogue and incidents are fictionalized for commentary and educational purposes. No defamation intended, only illustration of error and accountability in American politics. He showed bank records proving that several transfers had been deliberately structured to avoid federal reporting requirements. Most damaging of all, he revealed recorded phone conversations where Bondi personally thanked Epstein for his continued support and promised to keep his legal troubles out of Florida courts. The hearing devolved into chaos as Democratic committee members demanded immediate investigations and Republican members struggled to distance themselves from Bondi's imploding defense. Reporters shouted questions over each other, creating a cacophony that drowned out Bondi's increasingly frantic attempts to explain her relationship with one of the most notorious criminals in recent American history. By 11:30 a.m., less than 2 hours after the hearing began, Bondi's political career was effectively over. Her law firm began receiving calls from clients demanding to terminate their retainer agreements. Republican Party leaders issued statements distancing themselves from her previous endorsements. She insisted she had no knowledge of Epstein's criminal activities at the time she accepted the donations, despite the fact that his first conviction for soliciting prostitution from a minor had occurred in 2008, the same year the transfers began. Jordan methodically destroyed each of her explanations with additional documents. He produced email exchanges between Bondi's campaign manager and Epstein's financial advisors discussing donation strategies and timing. MSNBC replayed the 23-second sequence on loop, analyzing her facial expressions and body language frame by frame. Even Fox News, typically supportive of Republican figures, covered the story extensively, unable to ignore the overwhelming evidence. Bondi attempted to recover, claiming the transfers were routine political donations that had been properly reported and legally accepted. But her voice shook with each word, and her explanations became increasingly convoluted and desperate. The sender was listed as Jeffrey Epstein, Financial Management, LLC. The recipient was the Pam Bondi Legal Defense Fund, a political action committee she had established during her first campaign for Attorney General. The effect was instantaneous and devastating. Bondi's face went completely white as the blood drained from her cheeks. Her mouth opened slightly, but no words came out. Her hands, which had been gesturing confidently moments earlier, froze in midair before dropping to her sides like dead weights. The pearl earrings caught the light as her head turned slightly toward the document, her eyes widening with unmistakable recognition. But Jordan wasn't finished. He reached back into the folder and produced another document, this one showing a send wire transfer from 2 weeks later in the amount of $32,400. Then another and another, each transfer larger than the last. The papers accumulated on the table in front of him like evidence at a crime scene, each one representing another nail in the coffin of Bondi's political career. The numbers were staggering. Between August 2008 and December 2015, Bondi's various political committees had received a total of 4,315 wire transfers from accounts directly linked to Jeffrey Epstein's financial network. The total amount exceeded $47 million, making her one of the largest recipients of Epstein-connected political donations in American history. Social media exploded within minutes. Twitter users began trending the hashtag #BondiBusted, with thousands of users sharing screenshots of the wire transfer documents. TikTok creators started making memes about her shocked facial expression, setting her stunned silence to popular music tracks. Reddit threads dissected every detail of the transfers, with users identifying shell companies and offshore accounts that had funneled money to her campaigns. The mainstream media reaction was swift and merciless. CNN interrupted regular programming to cover the hearing live, with anchors describing Bondi's exposure as one of the most dramatic political reversals they had ever witnessed. She accused the Justice Department of protecting Epstein's co-conspirators by deliberately mishandling financial evidence. Her hands gestured dramatically as she painted a picture of systematic corruption and willful blindness that she claimed went all the way to the top of federal law enforcement. The irony was breathtaking. Here was Pam Bondi, whose own office had received multiple tips about Epstein's Florida operations during her tenure as Attorney General, accusing others of the exact same negligence she had demonstrated years earlier. The committee members exchanged knowing glances as Bondi unknowingly sealed her own fate with every word. At exactly 10:10 a.m., 23 seconds after Bondi finished her opening statement, Jordan opened the manila folder with deliberate slowness. The sound of paper sliding against paper was picked up by every microphone in the room. His voice was calm, almost conversational, as he began to speak. The contrast between his measured tone and Bondi's passionate accusations was stark and immediately noticeable to everyone watching. Jordan's first question was deceptively simple. He asked Bondi if she believed attorney generals had a responsibility to pursue all financial evidence related to sexual trafficking cases, regardless of the political connections of the suspects involved. Bondi answered with emphatic agreement, not realizing she was walking directly into the carefully constructed trap that was about to destroy her credibility completely. The congressman's next move was surgical in its precision. He lifted a single sheet of paper from the folder, holding it just high enough for the cameras to capture his movement without revealing its contents. His voice remained steady as he asked Bondi if she had personally reviewed all wire transfer records related to Jeffrey Epstein during her time as Florida's top law enforcement officer. Bondi's answer was immediate and definitive. She claimed her office had conducted a thorough review of all available financial records and had found no evidence of suspicious activity that warranted state-level prosecution. She emphasized that any failures belonged entirely to federal authorities who had jurisdiction over interstate financial crimes. Her confidence was absolute, her conviction unshakable, and her destruction inevitable. Jordan paused for exactly 3 seconds, allowing the weight of Bondi's statement to settle in the minds of everyone watching. The chamber fell completely silent, except for the soft whir of camera motors and the distant sound of traffic outside the Capitol building. Even the reporters stopped typing, sensing that something significant was about to happen. The tension was so thick it was almost visible. With practiced theatricality, Jordan flipped the paper around and held it toward the cameras. The document showed a wire transfer receipt dated September 23, 2011, in the amount of $57,800. She accused federal prosecutors of deliberately hiding financial evidence that could have exposed Epstein's network years earlier. She claimed investigators had ignored obvious money trails and suspicious wire transfers that any competent attorney general would have pursued aggressively. Her binder contained what she called irrefutable proof of prosecutorial negligence. Page after page of bank routing numbers, suspicious transactions, and encrypted communication logs that she claimed federal authorities had willfully overlooked. The documents rustled loudly as she flipped through them, each page turn amplified by the sensitive committee microphones. Her confidence grew with each accusation, her voice becoming stronger and more accusatory. Jordan sat motionless, his fingers steepled in front of his face, watching Bondi dig herself deeper into the hole she didn't realize she was creating. His staff assistant, A young woman with wire-rimmed glasses quietly slid a manila folder across the table toward him. Inside were copies of wire transfer receipts that would change the entire trajectory of the hearing in less than 60 seconds. Bondi continued her attack, her voice rising with righteous indignation as she described what she called the most egregious failure of law enforcement oversight in modern American history. For weeks, she had been promising explosive revelations about prosecutorial misconduct and hidden evidence. What she didn't know was that Jordan's staff had spent the previous 72 hours compiling her own banking records from 2008 through 2016. The hearing officially began at 9:50 a.m. sharp. Committee Chairman Jerry Nadler's gavel echoed through the chamber as Bondi leaned forward toward her microphone, her hands clasped tightly together to stop them from shaking. She had rehearsed this opening statement dozens of times in her Tampa law office, but nothing could have prepared her for the trap that was about to snap shut around her political career. Bondi's voice carried across the silent chamber with practiced authority as she began her assault on the Epstein investigation. Her eyes locked onto the cameras, speaking directly to the American people watching live on CNN and Fox News. The harsh fluorescent lights reflected off her pearl earrings as she adjusted her navy blazer one final time. Across the polished table sat Congressman Jim Jordan, his American flag pin catching the camera lights, a slight smirk already forming at the corners of his mouth. He had been waiting for this moment for months. Bondi cleared her throat, her voice projecting confidence she clearly didn't feel. The microphone clipped to her lapel, picked up every nervous breath as she shuffled through her prepared talking points. Behind her, 23 reporters held their phones ready, live streaming every second to Twitter and TikTok. The C-SPAN cameras zoomed in on her face, capturing the subtle beads of sweat forming along her hairline, despite the air-conditioned chamber. This wasn't just another routine committee hearing about campaign finance violations. This was Bondi's calculated attempt to stoke mounting pressure about her own connections to Jeffrey Epstein's financial network by attacking the federal investigation itself.